When all subtlety has gone out the window and you need to break through the heaviest defenses, look no further than the awe-inspiring power of the AT-AT. What's up, MetaNerds? In this complete breakdown of the all-terrain armored transport, we'll be pulling from both legends and canon sources, talking about its stats, capabilities, and role on the battlefield. Sit back, relax, and get ready for a tale that stretches all the way from Jabeam to Jakku. The all-terrain armored transport serves as the mainstay of Imperial assaults on the most heavily defended positions, towering over the battlefront and delivering lethal salvos of laser fire. This hulking walker stood at an intimidating 22.5 meters, essentially a reinforced troop compartment atop a quarter of powerful legs, with a head-like command module mounted on the front, bearing the walker's weaponry and sensor systems. It carried up to 40 troops, plus additional equipment on a two-tiered transport deck, and was extremely well armored, impervious to all but the heaviest attacks. So let's look at every system, but like all good breakdowns, we'll start with the armament. The heaviest weaponry of the walker is carried directly below the chin, coming in the form of two Taemin-Bak MS-1 heavy laser cannons. These cannons were extremely powerful, capable of dealing with ground targets such as medium tanks and heavily protected bunkers with ease, and at a range of up to 17 kilometers. That's over 10 miles. These cannons were fire-linked, offering a pair of modes, both single and dual fire in conjunction, all with firing data from the cockpit. In some AT-ATs, these Taemin-Baks were switched with the Mk3EW heavy laser cannons, which bore a no less destructive reputation. These were fixed, although the head could swivel on the move to engage targets in a deceptively broad 180-degree field of fire. The heavy cannons were augmented by a pair of FF4 medium repeating blaster cannons, positioned in a swivel mount on each cheek of the command module. These cannons, with their even broader field of fire and independent adjustability, could engage lighter ground vehicles, installations, and even airspeeders. Their built-in rangefinder afforded them independent accuracy against such secondary targets, picking off positions to clear the main cannons to engage the heaviest targets. In some AT-ATs, these FF4s were replaced by Mk2EW medium blaster cannons, and these variations seem to depend on the factory line from which they were produced. While the AT-AT could dish out considerable damage, it could also take return fire exceedingly well, being one of the most well-protected vehicles in the Empire's service. Dense 9095 T8511 grade Durasteel armor plated the entirety of this massive war machine, thick enough to be invulnerable to most weaponry. During the Battle of Hoth, Rebel forces turned P-Tower anti-vehicle emplacements against these walkers, and even though they could penetrate the armor of AT-STs and repulsor tanks, they had no effect on this walker's legs. 3 ATTE rounds at point-blank range likewise failed to even dent the heavy armor of this walker. In another impressive feat, a volley of 4 proton torpedoes from the Ghost failed to halt the advance of another AT-AT on Sphyrna. They were simply impervious to most weaponry, its armor harmlessly dissipating attacks, which was necessary to move them through heavily defended lines, breaching the enemy's perimeter and delivering their onboard infantry to their targets. Mines, likewise, were virtually useless, the heavy Durasteel footpads simply muffling the blasts, and the armored belly of the vehicle being too high to be impacted by such explosions, a notable design improvement from the ATTE. Only concentrated heavy artillery or ground fire from tanks and heavy guns was capable of bringing down this walker in conventional combat. This durability was so considerable that perhaps its greatest attribute was its psychological effect, invoking terror and making the rebels feel impotent, with a single walker being able to snuff out the sparks of rebellion in cities all across the galaxy. Of course, this is also what made the Jedi invaluable to the Rebel Alliance. If you could get close in with a lightsaber, like Kanan Jarrus on Sphyrna or Luke Skywalker on Hoth, then any AT-AT will be in for a bad time. While the walker was durable and lethal, it was also very top-heavy, with its weight concentrated on the upper third of the AT-AT above its towering legs. To guarantee the stability of the walker as well as accuracy on the move, the gait of the AT-AT was carefully managed. Impulse terrain sensors on each footpad worked in conjunction with ground-penetrating radar scans in order to give the pilots in the cockpit an expert view of the terrain ahead. While moving, the pilots enjoyed a 3D understanding of the ground beyond the walker, including factors such as density and composition of the soil, rock, earth, or snow. This combination of excellent sensors allowed it to operate in a number of environments, including through water and amid deep snow, without concern for losing its footing from sudden pitfalls or unexpectedly loose rock or soil. It definitely lived up to the all-terrain reputation of their line, surprising opposing forces when moving through rugged ground and giving Imperial commanders greater approach options. Of course, it should technically be called the most terrain's armored transport, as there were still certain environments that it was just unsuitable for, such as extremely steep hillsides, and even deep bogs and swamps could arrest the vehicle's motion. And certainly couldn't crawl up sheer cliff walls or hang upside down like its beloved Republic predecessor. But the Walker's considerable height also proved an advantage in easily passing over trench lines, non-explosive anti-tank obstacles, and had the sheer power to just smash through buildings and anything built up to try and stop it. Enemy vehicles in defilade or behind cover that might not be seen with visual sensors could be detected by its other sensors like the radar, and the AT-AT drivers would be sure to rain down fire from above. But it wasn't exactly a stealth vehicle, as just the motion from the impact of the footpads would shake the ground with such force that it was noticeable kilometers away. But again, especially under the Tarkin Doctrine, this was seen as mostly a plus, just another way to strike terror in civilians and break the ranks of rebels, as the torturous booms slowly increased in strength, giving a young rebel plenty of time to go home and rethink his life. Armies could throw all their weaponry at the AT-AT battle line only to watch it be harmlessly absorbed. Combine that with the psychological terror, and you'll understand why the Battle of Hoth was such a moral victory for the Rebel Alliance, as it was the first major battle where these were taken down. Rex, Wolf, Gregor, and the Spectres did have some luck against these, but that was before the official start of the Galactic Civil War. It was on an obscure world, where the resistance and successful evacuation at Hoth would be a story told throughout the galaxy. The vehicle's weapons and motion was powered by a reactor system of two Kuat Drive Yard's FW62 compact fusion drive systems. These drive systems, while powerful, could overload if breached and detonated. With this power, the heavy AT-AT could move at a considerable 60 km per hour, or 37 miles per hour, although that is on the best conditions on the most suitable terrain. 3 fuel slug tanks at the rear of the vehicle provided a continual power feed into the reactor. Being a solid form of fuel, think of the little pellets in a pellet grill, and this area was the most well protected, with extra plating of that special Durasteel armor to increase the Walker's survivability. Pause to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into their network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists that can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences when it comes to therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's through chat, text, or a video or phone call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule therapy sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch therapists for no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you'd expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who's custom-picked for you, there's more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/MetaNerdz. That's betterhelp.com/MetaNerdz. I've also linked them down in the description. The head in which the command cabin was located contained the main crew, with a surprisingly low number of just 3 individuals. 2 pilots, specially trained and drawn from the grueling selection process of already proven veterans, who crewed the vehicle and fired its armaments. They were directed by a vehicle commander, with access to a periscope and additional command and control communications. AT-AT crews developed a close connection with their vehicles, and were encouraged to consider themselves as an extension of their vehicle and vice versa, often personally overseeing maintenance on these machines. AT-AT pilots wore helmets and suits which directly interfaced with the computers of the Walker, like an augmented reality system, giving them a level of control like you might see in a fighter jet.
Uses 6 electro-optical sensors, giving the pilot an unprecedented 360 degrees of situational awareness. The pilot can actually look through the aircraft itself.
Those sensors giving them a simulated 360-degree field of vision, as well as the vehicle's vitals.
How's our hull looking? Badly damaged. We're at 70% integrity and falling.
Like electrical systems and fuel reserves. Wearing their full armor and helmet gave crews additional protection in the case of a breach, and did have some protection against radiation and fire. Unsurprisingly, AT-AT pilots consider themselves and their vehicles to be invulnerable, and gained a reputation for possibly well-deserved arrogance. 2 additional deck officers oversaw the troop compartment, allowing the piloting crew to focus on their primary duties. For all that firepower and capability, it was not a tank. Its primary purpose was to deliver infantry rather than slug it out with enemy vehicles. That was left for purpose-built Imperial walkers and repulsor craft. And its 40 troops were typically either stormtroopers or Imperial Army assault troopers, specially trained in deployment from this unique beast. A boom system could either drop the troops into combat directly from the belly, rolling out in several rapid waves, or the Walker could kneel and the troops could disembark via a boarding ramp. In case of a breach, the onboard personnel could try and get out through a pair of escape hatches, one on each side of the compartment, to ensure that no matter which side the walker fell on, there was always a route to escape from the vehicle. Before deployment, troops were secured in 2 rows of seats, 2 on each deck, with a padded crash belt locking them into place, so injuries from impacts or a fall would be minimized. There's a clever design built into these benches that would wirelessly charge the packs and suits of storm and snowtroopers. A combat speeder bike garage at the AT-AT's rear held up to 5 speeders. These were typically deployed after the AT-AT had broken through enemy lines, released all its troops, and were now hunting down survivors. Once deployed via a harness system from the rear of the walker, the speeders would ferret out resistance, lay sensors or mines, and serve as scouts and pickets for the main assault force. The speeders were noted to well complement the plotting AT-ATs, screening and scouting for its parent vehicle, which could carry 2 disassembled AT-STs. And in addition to all that, the supplementary cargo capacity was measured at 1 ton, a little more than 1 dewback. The lumbering walkers required massive transports to bring them from their orbiting motherships down to the planetary battlefield. In most deployments, AT-ATs would be brought down singularly or in pairs aboard sizable Theta-class dropships. Although when deployed from the Dreadnought-sized vehicles, they could be brought down 4 at a time aboard Y-85 Titans. They could also be dropped directly into combat via Gazanti-class cruisers 2 at a time, going into action immediately and giving them a surprising degree of operational mobility, though they were typically deployed for ground assaults from orbit by large dropships. Walkers stationed within super-class warships, such as the Executor-class Star Dreadnought, were delivered to planetary surfaces within the previously mentioned Y-85. Smaller starships, such as the Imperial-class Star Destroyer, deployed single or paired walkers via the Theta-class, while other designs, including the Telgorn Corporation Warlord dropship, were capable of delivering an armored platoon of 4 walkers directly into battle zones as well. And sometimes they weren't even filled with troops. This whole space was filled with war material meant to reinforce some outpost. When deployed, they would often be in staggered formation, providing overlapping fields of fire. As you see, you can get that arc way above 180 degrees, and the pilots would work in synchrony with each other to methodically destroy enemy emplacements, especially useful since the walker contained no aft-mounted weaponry. This is why we often see them flanked by AT-STs or repulsor tanks, being able to fall back and let their big brother take out any anti-tank weaponry the enemy might have, while keeping security and making sure the enemy didn't ambush them from the rear. Now, he mentioned it survived that attack from the Ghost, but with its enormous size, it was pretty hard to miss and vulnerable to all form of aerial attack. There are many times where this walker has a TIE fighter escort, just to make sure they weren't bombed out by some old refurbished Y-Wing. A properly coordinated AT-AT advance would be a frightening spectacle of combined arms. And while some rebel propaganda, especially after Hoth, like to portray this thing as a big lumbering dope, stupidly designed with a limited field of fire and easy to topple, they and the Empire knew that the truth was that when used correctly, this is one of the most effective pieces in the entire military. In fact, it's none of these supposedly obvious design flaws that are actually considered flaws by the engineers or the rebels, as they knew the real move was to sneak into this thing, taking advantage of its small crew, or be lucky enough to be able to get a shot onto its neck tube, which couldn't be rigidly covered in that plate armor since it had to be flexible to move side to side. And of course, the genius tactic of using tow cables mounted aboard converted T-47 airspeeders was a form of rebel guerrilla tactics that you just can't plan for. Turning to their history, they were deployed in their prototype stage as early as the Battle of Jabeam in the midst of the Clone Wars, where they proved their effectiveness by remaining mobile amid the planet's thick mud, while vaporizing Separatist war machines such as the OG-9 homing spiders and hailfires with ease. These early models, with their squared-off cargo compartments, nonetheless fell to the wayside due more to the Republic's devastating defeat than their own performance. The innovative General Maximilian Veers championed the AT-AT concept and brought it into service as a mainstay of Imperial forces after the Battle of Yavin, where it became the war machine we all know and fear. They fought off a rebel incursion on Karaida itself, where its potential to be tripped and disabled first became known. Production was seen on many major Imperial factory worlds, such as Balmara and of course Kuat. In true Imperial fashion, they made sure to modify them to take over the galaxy, being viable on any terrain, with a wide variety of more esoteric variants, which is going to get its own video coming soon, as there are just so many variants to try and fit in here. Some of these that were after Endor came with mounted turbolasers, ion cannons, thicker plate armor, and even an aquatic swimmer version, so all that's going to be in the next breakdown. AT-AT saw use as late as 130 ABY in Legends by Darth Krayt's Galactic Empire, in both their standard version and AT-AHT upgrade. and as late as 34 ABY by the First Order in a modernized variant alongside the Titanic ATM-6. It's a truly iconic vehicle, doing everything from shooting a Force deity in the sky at the Battle of Adelon to serving as Rey's home as a rusted hulk in the deserts of Jakku. Now, they were of course not for private sale, but if you could get the right credentials and 150,000 credits, one of these devastating weapons of war could be yours. Just make sure you stock up on fuel pellets too. If an AT-AT existed in real life, it'd be about as tall as a semi-truck laid vertically, and as long as 2 school buses or 5 Volkswagen Beetles. They would tower over the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles, coming in at 1.5 times its height, while dwarfing everything else on the battlefront, being longer than 2 AATs or Rebel repulsor tanks, while being nearly as tall as 3 Hailfire droids or 2 of its predecessors, the AT-TE. If you didn't have a grapple hook, but you could clone Yoda, you'd have to balance 34 of them on top of each other to reach the top of the stooped cockpit. Although in the right art style, I'm sure he could topple one with the wave of his hand. Now for some cool facts and behind the scenes stuff. The actual size of the AT-AT has been a source of drama in the Star Wars community for as long as The Empire Strikes Back has been out. Radio dramatizations, source books, West End RPG guides, and independent articles have given a range of heights from 33 feet to 55 feet. Curtis Saxton, Lord of Star Wars Visual Dictionaries, has given the most popularly accepted answer of 22.5 meters, carefully measuring Luke's height compared to the AT-AT he destroyed with the handy combination of lightsaber and concussion grenade. George Lucas's inspiration for the AT-ATs were the towering Martian tripods from H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, while also specific design inspiration came from the giant maneuvering cranes that he would see in the port of Oakland, as well as a cancelled US Army prototype meant to be used in Vietnam. Just imagine that thing. And of course, there's tons of debate on how to pronounce it. You've heard me use both in this video, but I'm sure there'll be a war in the comments that'll make Palpatine proud over whether you say AT-AT or just AT-AT. Bring your best case argument down below. Its role in the battlefield is more akin to IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles, which are designed to drop off a load of infantry and support them while they advance towards the enemy. Unlike IFVs, of course, they can destroy the heaviest armor that comes to face them, so it's a mix of a main battle tank and IFV rolled into one. It seems that in every Star Wars video game, role-playing game, and book, someone just has to hijack an AT-AT to complete their objective. From Cal Kestis seizing one to help Saw Gerrera's partisans on Kashyyyk, to escorting a captured rebel AT-AT in Star Wars Battlefront 2. Iden Versio captures one in the game's main campaign, and during the liberation of Kashyyyk, a Wookiee named Karatha one-ups Chewbacca's AT-ST hijack, commandeering an entire AT-AT mid-battle. Just remember, if you intend to board an AT-AT, wait for the 40 troopers to deploy, and then just take out the dorks in AR helmets. That's it for the breakdown. Please hit that like button, it's the best way to help me out. Check out the links in the description, and most important of all, remember, the ground booming from the footsteps of an AT-AT means you do have some time to rethink your decision, but do it fast because they can shoot you from 10 miles away. And the Force will be with you, always.